14 states from Springer Mountain, Georgia, all the way up to Mount Todd, Maine. Typically takes about 4 to 6 months. It took us just under 5 months to complete. Interesting statistic, about 1 out of 5 people who attempt to do a through hike of the entire Appalachian Trail are successful.
So a lot of people say, what's a through hike? A through hike is pretty much defined as completing the entire 18 in a 12-month period of time. You can northbound it, which we did. You start at Georgia, go up to Maine. You can southbound it, start in Maine, go down to Georgia, or you can flip-flop, which you start pretty much anywhere. A lot of people start in Harpers Ferry, go up, and then go back down and flip-flop. We decided to northbound the trail because there's a lot of people that start in Georgia and go up to Maine. We were looking forward to meeting a ton of new faces.
All right, so here's a picture I found just the other day. I thought it was pretty cool. I didn't know this coming into the trail. So there's actually 3 long-distance trails in America. You have the Pacific Crest Trail, which runs from Mexico to Canada through California. The Continental Divide Trail, Mexico to Canada through the central United States, and we have the Appalachian Trail, Georgia to Maine. So just comparatively, these are both longer trails, but that was just something I found interesting before we came in here. So I'll also talk about why. So when I first started grad school, a buddy of mine took me on my first backpacking trip, and it was awful. We had no gear, sleeping on right on the floor. And so on the way home, he was trying to get my spirits up. He was telling me about this book called A Walk in the Woods. Some of you guys might have heard of it, by Bill Bryson. And so I started listening to this book, and from there I was hooked. I knew I was going to be doing the entire Appalachian Trail, and the woods eventually became like my beach. So it was kind of my getaway.
So here we are at Springer Mountain, March 4th, starting the trail. Doesn't feel that long ago.
Mm-mm.
And then so there's an approach trail. It's 8 miles. It doesn't count of the Appalachian Trail, and it goes straight up all these steps. And then finally you get to the Appalachian Trail. So this is our start. It was super cold, windy, snowy.
Yeah, we ended up starting a day early. Supposed to start on March 5th, but there was a ice storm coming in, so we had to get down there early, get a day in. So as you can see, all the ice and everything. All right, so as you heard earlier, we go by Moss and Starcrutch. These are our trail names. You kind of take over a different identity while you're out there. So I'll talk about how we got our names. My trail name was Moss. So about 3 weeks in, I kept running out of toilet paper. And after a couple days, Starcrunch refused to let me use hers anymore. So I had to resort to some moss. Better than it sounds.
Good to know.
Starcrunch here posing with her favorite little Debbie snack, Starcrunch. So that's how she got her name.
You get to eat whatever you want on trail. It's amazing. And here we are. We crossed our first state line. Is North Carolina and Georgia. So we ran into a ton of trail magic, even just in the first state line crossing.
Yeah, so I'll kind of talk about what trail magic is. So trail magic's anything unexpected that is given to you, whether it be some food, a ride into the local town, or something like that. So our first instance of trail magic you can see here is from the Yellow Deli. They actually own a place up around here, and they were trying to talk to us about it while we were there. So it was like 20 degrees. We were coming around a corner that day, and freezing rain, and I could smell hamburgers, and I thought maybe I was just hallucinating. And you come around the corner, and you see this giant bus in this tent with a heater, and a guy greeted us with a thing of soup and a sandwich and told us to have a seat and warm up a little bit. So that was amazing. It was definitely our first experience, and I was telling somebody about it about a week later, how happy we were to have it from the Yellow Deli. He's like, oh yeah, the Yellow Deli, they have the big bus. They're like, oh yeah, that's the cult. And so apparently this group comes down every year and meets all the thru hikers about a weekend and kind of pitches their cult to them. It's just kind of a funny story for the whole thing. We didn't fall for it. And this family on the left actually is really interesting. They did the entire trail last year, Their daughter, Felia, was the youngest person to ever complete it at 6 years old.
Wow.
So they came back down to have us. They hosted us in their house that they rented, which had a hot tub and everything. It was an amazing time.
Also, I think the Martinsburg Rotary, they do Trail Magic Keys Gap every year. They try to pick the year where there's a lot of through hikers going to Harper's Ferry. They try to get them right there. So it's always fun to do
like a
that
big
if there's
tailgate.
ever y'all ever want to do that.
Here's some more pictures of the Trail Magic. Yeah, just people dropping stuff off and really nice.
So we started crossing into North Carolina and Tennessee quite frequently. That's just how the Appalachian Trail runs up.
Yep.
And we made it into the Smokies. The Smokies wasn't our favorite section. You had to stay in the shelters, and it was like a race every morning to try to get to the next shelter. Or you're either doing 25 miles or you're doing 10 miles, and you kind of know who's going to be at the shelter, but then there's also section hikers that are going to be at the shelter. So it was very, I don't know, it's very stressful on us to have to know we have to get to the shelter in this amount of time, and if not, then you're going to be stuck outside sleeping. So we got to one of the shelters, and just in the nick of time that we got a space on the floor.
Yeah.
Like a dog, we slept on
We
the
were
floor.
pretty
that
happy to be
night.
sleeping on the floor this night. This was the coldest night that we had by far. All right, yeah, and this is the next morning up on top of Clingman's Dome here. This is the tallest peak of the Appalachian Trail. So it was so windy up there. Actually, one of my gloves ended up flying away. Flew off my hand. And this is my favorite section of the Appalachian Trail. So much of the Appalachian Trail is underneath tree cover. They call it the Green Tunnel. So this is one of the early sections where you actually get up above tree line for a while and just have these beautiful, expansive views.
And then we finally made it to Virginia. Virginia is a huge state line crossing, but you're in Virginia for how long?
540 miles, yeah.
Yeah, 544 miles. It's 24% of the whole entire Appalachian Trail. So people end up with the Virginia blues, they call it, because you go for so long without crossing the state line. But we really, really enjoyed Virginia.
Yep, so in Virginia, we actually picked up our border collie, Danny, who joined us for about 400 miles of the trail. It's not uncommon for people to try to do the entire trail with the dogs, but just because of the roughness of it, they can't really make it. She made it up to Shenandoah National Park with us, but the ticks were so bad this season, we had to send her home. And we just got to we started getting local, so we got to meet our families a lot more.
They came out and did Trail Magic with us, and I don't know if y'all know about the roller coaster. It's near us where we are locally wise, but.
And then this is Virginia's also home to the Virginia Triple Crown, McAfee Knob, which is one of the most picturesque pictures on the whole trail. And then also you have Dragon's Tooth and Tinker Cliffs. Some people attempt to do this in one day. We had to split it up over a couple days. This is me up here. I actually got pretty dehydrated on that climb. Was a little dizzy and stuff, so it was a tough day.
This is my favorite part. Virginia is also home of the Grayson Highlands. It's where all these wild ponies are roaming around, and they come up and lick the salt off of you from sweating all day. You're not supposed to feed them, but then, of course, the sign that says don't feed them is at the end of the trail if you're going northbound. So I'm like, well, we just gave them all of our Cheetos, but they auction them off at the end of the year, but they're legit ponies. I was walking in thinking, oh, we're going to see these horses that are taller than me, but they were this high. It was awesome. I'd go back there in a heartbeat.
All right, and then this is us in Harper's Ferry at the halfway point, psychological halfway point. Where we started in Georgia, we were numbers 544 and 545. Here we're number 186 and 187. That's of northbound hikers. So in a little bit more than 2 months, we gained on about 300 people. So probably, I would say about 50% of those quit, and 50% we might have just passed. So.
We were picked up by my dad, Rick Caruso, and we spent 7 days in our town because we just needed a break at that point.
Yeah, we took 7 zeros. So I'll talk to you about what a zero is. Zero is when you do absolutely 0 trail miles. This is a picture of me. This is my blow-up mattress that I sleep on. It also works as a nice flotation device. So we took 23 zeros out of 152 days it took us to do the entire trail. That's probably about 10% more than most people, I would imagine. More than 10%. Most people take about 15 zeros. But we preferred to do longer days and take more days off. Is kind of how we did it. So with all those zeros that we took when we got here, we decided to go to trail days, or I went to trail days in Damascus, Virginia. It's an annual event where they hold and with all the past, future, and present through hikers. So it's a big, essentially weekend-long party with all the vendors and everybody that comes and tries to sell gear and stuff like that. And at the culmination of the weekend is a parade where the hikers dress up in the most weird things they could find and walk down the street while the townspeople spray the dirty hikers with water. As you can see, try to give us a bath.
So we finally got back on trail. It was hard, but we did it. We go through West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania. A lot of people do all 4 states in one day. It took us quite a while because we stayed in West Virginia for so long, but yeah, go Virginia, then West Virginia, Maryland, into Pennsylvania.
And then this is the actual halfway point at Pine Grove Furnace State Park. They have what's called the half-gallon challenge. Try to eat a half-gallon of ice cream in an hour. It was no match, but after that was breakfast, so the hike out afterwards was a little rough.
This is the award you get.
Yeah, that's the reward you get. You get a little ice cream spoon.
So Pennsylvania is also known as Rocksylvania because you're constantly going through these rocks and up the rocks and down the rocks, and it's just nothing but rocks. You go through one pair of shoes easily in Pennsylvania.
And this is so crossing from Pennsylvania to New Jersey at the Delaware Water Gap here. Jersey was a brief state, but they did have these nice long boardwalks that would take you through the bogs and stuff like that, so you didn't actually have to walk through the bogs, but that's coming.
We made it into New York. It was pretty awesome to see. If you look really, really, really close there, you can see the New York skyline from that part of the Appalachian Trail. We enjoyed New York for the most part, but of course with every state it has its pros and cons. Pro is there's delis along the AT in New York. It's awesome. You don't have to carry much food. But the con is the terrain is pretty treacherous.
Yeah, the terrain definitely started to pick up in New York and onto Connecticut and also into Massachusetts. These were both relatively smaller states. We were lucky enough to get picked up in Connecticut by Pam's uncle, Rick's dad, brother. Here's some funnier pictures. Funnier pictures that we found in Connecticut and Massachusetts. This is just some of the terrain that they try to get you to go down. And this was completely raining all day, so these were very slippery. We took quite a few falls. That's the next picture. Oh no, this is Vermont.
Oh, Vermont. So I like to say we slipped our way through Vermont because Vermont's also called for mud. I don't know if you can see here, but my foot is underneath all this mud. I just stepped down and then it sank into all the mud. I fell quite a few times. We both fell in Vermont quite a few times because of all the mud.
They try their best to maintain the trail there, but it's pretty impossible.
Yeah. And our hiking poles didn't survive Vermont. They both snapped in half. His pole snapped, and then a week later my pole snapped. So he gave me his pole, and I had my good pole, and then he got 2 new poles. And so Vermont gave us a run for our money, that's for sure.
This is a nice area where a lot of people leave their broken poles as they're coming through. It just happens so often. And then this is how we spent our 4th of July. This is actually the beginning of the toughest climbs that we had. This is climb up Smarts Mountain. And then you get on top of Smarts Mountain, there is a fire tower. So we had a 360-degree view of all the fireworks going on that night. It was great. That climb might have been a little bit easier, but we might have taken up a bad line.
So New Hampshire, everyone says, oh, wait for the whites, New Hampshire, and it was definitely worth the comments people tell you about. So New Hampshire's home of the whites. It's the most rugged mountains on the AT. You have Mount Moosilauke at the presidentials. The views are worth it. Worth the climb.
Yep, so here's the White Mountains, and what this sign says is stop, if there's any weather, turn around. People die every single year up there from going up in just simple rainstorms. You're so high up and exposed that it's very easy to get hypothermic up there. So we had a day planned where we were supposed to do I think it was like 18 miles split over 2 days because the miles are a lot harder up there. But because the storm was coming the next day, we had to push and do the entire mountain one day. And I think that probably was our hardest day on trail for sure.
But it was a pretty day.
But also up in the Whites, they have the huts. So you're not typically, like the Smokies, you're not really allowed to just camp. They want you staying in and around the huts. But they are pretty expensive for most thru hikers who are on a very tight budget.
It's about $125 a person.
Yeah.
And that's a bunk bed.
Yeah, and that's to sleep in a bunk with 12 other people. But they do offer for the thru hikers what's called work for stay. They typically assign you some small job. This is one of the thru hikers telling them about their hike, telling the other people, just the day hikers, about their hike. Other tasks they have them do is like sweep or do the dishes or stuff. And for that, you're allowed to sleep under the tables.
So at this point, we could officially say that we walked from Georgia to Maine, but we also had 281 miles to go.
And those are some of the toughest miles for sure. So this right there, she's climbing through. This is called the Mahoosuc Notch. It's the hardest mile on the AT. I guess it's not the longest. I guess they're all pretty much the same. But it's definitely it's the longest. As you can see, here's some ice still. This was in July. So it took us, typically we averaged 2.5 to 3 miles per hour. This took us almost 2 hours to do 1 mile of this up and down car-sized boulders. So.
This is just parts of Maine. Here you can see moss going, it's straight up this rock slab, and then there I am down below there. And the bugs were terrible. I mean, it was like prime time bug season, those horse flies that just like to bite you, and all the mosquitoes flying around. So I finally put on the bug net, and it gave me a little bit of happiness under that thing.
Here's some more of the bad terrain. This is a trail, believe it or not. And then, as you can see, I fell off of one of the bog bridges, and there was mud up to about there in my leg.
But the views in Maine were worth it. So. And so were the blueberries.
Yeah, lots of wild blueberries once we hit Maine.
And that's us just crossing our next 1,000-mile marker. 2,000. As you walk along that AT, there's hikers like to mark 100-mile, 200-mile, 300-mile. So the 2,000 and the 1,000-mile marker were a big deal. So we came across that and took a picture.
So once you get up in Maine, there's lots of river fords and stuff. There's only one that you can't or you're not supposed to ford, and it's this one. It's the Kennebec. They were having a couple people or a person drown every couple years from trying to cross this river. Apparently, there's a current that goes underneath it that drags you. So the ATC had to hire a guy who sits there 8 hours a day and helps people across. That being said, we still did meet a couple hard-headed people that didn't want to wait for the next morning. There was an 18-year-old kid that, like you saw, I had my pad floated up or blown up. He blew up his pad and did successfully get across. But we told him not to.
And then there's the 100-mile wilderness in Maine. It's pretty much a 100-mile section where you can't get help. You're used to, like, the AT goes through towns every other day. This part doesn't go through town every other day. You have 100 miles until you get to the next town. So you want to be prepared at least with 10 days of food. We brought 5, thinking we could do 20 miles a day. And we were successful, but you could run into some trouble if you're not prepared for the 100-mile wilderness. There's the 100-mile wilderness right here.
So lots of great lakes and stuff all the way through Maine. We didn't really take part in a lot of the swimming in them because there was a guy that we were camping with one night and he went to go bathe and came out and his legs were covered in leeches. So we avoided the Maine lakes from there.
And then that's us seeing the finish line for the first time. It's Mount Katahdin as the finish line, and Ma said, "Hey, come out and look at this. You can see Katahdin." I'm looking, and I'm like, "I don't see it at all." Well, maybe that's it. He's like, "No, look above the clouds," and there it is, like right above the clouds. So that was the finish line right there.
Yeah, so it was kind of daunting, especially even as we got closer. This is the close up of Mount Katahdin.
They don't let you finish easily.
Yeah, so this is a little picture of, so this is over 800 feet gained per mile, which is a very tough one would have been 600 feet. So And then this is our final cards. These are our permits to hike it. So 178, 179. And we started at 544 and 545.
And this is just pictures of Mount Katahdin going up. We were the first ones up there,
We were-
so
yeah.
it was 7 a.m.
We got up pretty early. We
Yeah.
started somewhere down here, and you come up all the way up these ridge. And these are, like I said before, car-sized boulders that you climb up and over and stuff. It was no longer just hiking; it was more like rock climbing at that point.
That's us on top on August 2nd. Somebody finally came up and
Yeah,
was
we-
able to take our picture. And we also get asked a lot, what's next for us?
Yeah, so some commonly asked questions that we get a good bit. How much money people typically spend? 5 to 10,000 is probably about right. A lot of people ask me if I was going to bring a gun or some sort of form of protection. To be honest, I felt safer out there than I did in Martinsburg. So I don't typically carry a gun in Martinsburg. So. Wildlife encounters, a lot of people ask us about bear. We did see 3 bear. Oddly enough, 2 of those were from a car. My favorite one that I saw was the porcupine. I was hoping the whole time to see a porcupine. The one Star Crunch did not see was the rattlesnake she stepped over, but it ended up being all right. It kind of slithered away. Would we do it again? Hell no. But probably, yeah.
They also ask us how much weight did we lose. I lost 23 pounds. This is us at Amicalola, the hotel that's there at the base of the approach trail. So we made sure to take our before pictures in the hotel before we started the AT, and this is us after at home.
Yep.
You lost.
I lost about 60 pounds. Wow. I've gained about 20 pounds.
And we got to eat whatever we wanted the whole entire time.
Yeah.
So it was the best diet I've ever done.
How many pairs of shoes did we go through? I went through 6, and she went through 5. I think this pair, eventually I had to get helped off the mountain because it completely fell apart. So we had to have somebody come and drive us to a town.
Flat tire.
Yeah.
And also we get asked frequently how much our packs weigh. And it's kind of competitive between hikers. You know, how much is your pack? It's so Moss ended up coming in at 19 pounds. That's with 4 days of water, 2 liters, 4 days of food and 2 liters of water. I came in at 17. We kind of traded off what we're gonna. We help each other. We were together the whole time. So he carried the tent, I carried the cooking pot, and so it was helpful to be 2 people together. Most people, on average, they carry 25 to 30 pounds. But there's a guy that we had hiked. We met him in Georgia. We saw him again in Maine, and he was like, weigh me, then weigh my pack, and don't tell me how much my pack is because I know it's heavy. Just tell me at the end. And his pack ended up being 65 pounds.
Oh, wow.
He finished.
Yeah, they asked, would you stop if it was raining or snowing or sleeting? And the answer is no. We just kept hiking. We got a lot of questions about the type of stuff we ate. A lot of dehydrated food. This is the 34 resupply boxes that I made up before we left. My good friend Kevin Johnson mailed to us about one every 4 days, 4 or 5 days. So we typically carry about 4 to 5 days worth of food, no more than that if we didn't have to. And about a month in, I was tired of eating that. So.
And I was tired of Star Crunches.
Yeah. This is our different ways of getting water. Most of it was filtered with a Sawyer filter, but occasionally in dry areas, and especially dry years. This year was not a dry year, but some Trail Magic people would leave out for us to grab water and stuff.
Yeah, this is in front of somebody's yard. They left their hose out so you could just fill up your water bottle using their hose. And then we also get asked how often we got to bathe. Typically, on average, is 4 to 5 days, and the longest we went without one was 8 days. So that was probably the 100-mile wilderness. It was the best shower ever. There at the end of the 100-mile wilderness.
So where all did we sleep? This is one of my favorite ones right on the lake here. Various areas in the woods. Occasionally somebody would let us camp in their backyard. Yeah, and then this is another great one with the view of Katahdin. This is the night before we summited.
Probably my favorite spot. spot.
Yeah.
We're about to be done.
This is my favorite slide. This is all the dogs of the AT
We-
that we met.
Yeah, it kept us going. Every time we'd see a dog, our morale would boost up a ton.
This
We are dog lovers.
this one here actually completed the entire trail.
And
which
this
is real
one
dope.
too.
Yeah.
So that's Arrow, and this is Scott Blue
Blue.
Sky, something like that. He's a big old pit bull. And so a lot of people also ask us what's next for us, what are we going to do? And we ended up getting engaged on top of the Thanks for having us. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to.
How long did it take to get your trail legs?
About a month and a half. About a month. Yeah, we started averaging maybe around 20 miles a day about the time we hit Virginia. And you can do that until you hit New Hampshire. Once you hit New Hampshire, you drop down to, you're happy to do 12 miles a day.
You find yourself surprised when you start passing people. You're like, oh my gosh, I must have legs.
What would you do differently?
We have like different perspectives. I would have met more people. I was surprised we didn't come away with really close friends. I mean, we went northbound to meet all these people, but we were on our own agenda. We didn't want to have to wait like, oh, this person has to go resupply. And we're like, okay, well, we're leaving now because we have places to be. So I would have like tried to connect with more people. I mean, that being said, we have a really good friend that lives in Waco, Texas, and that we keep in touch with often. He liked our dog more than us, I think, at first. But I would have met more people and.
I wouldn't have done the resupply boxes. A lot of people, since you do hit a town about once every 4 to 5 days, they'll just resupply from town. It did save us some time and definitely saved us some weight because I was able to dehydrate a lot of our own food and prepare it ahead of time. But like I said, I was tired of eating it after a month. So a lot of it just got given away to other hikers, or
It makes you
I
love
still
it.
ended up spending more money on food in town. So I definitely do that different.
Did you come across many people from outside the U.S., and if so, what were some of their impressions of?
Yeah, actually
the
a lot
trail?
more than expected. We hiked with a guy from Germany for quite a while, a girl from Finland.
Oh yeah, Finland.
Girl from Finland,
Yeah.
she was the second female ever to do the entire Appalachian Trail
From Finland.
from Finland. We hiked with a lady who was 65 from England for the first probably 300-400 miles. And when we met her, we spent every day passing. Like we would pass her early on every single day. And she'd come in hours after us to the same spot. And then about midway through the trail, she was smoking us. We couldn't keep up with her. She had lost like 40 pounds and we had no chance. So.
It was crazy seeing people you met in Georgia and then you see them again in like New Hampshire and you're like, oh my gosh, you're a different person.
But yeah, their thoughts, they really liked, especially down south, there was a lot more trail magic and a lot of hospitality and stuff, and that was something that they weren't exactly used to. So all the people from out of states really enjoyed
A lot of them were like, I gotta get done in 6 months, my visa runs out then. So they were very So, is there any other questions for us?
Well, Donavan